Hi, welcome. Welcome everyone back to the Illuminated Castle. I'm so excited about today's guest. This is Ulrika Sullivan, and she is a spiritual intuitive coach and an author, and also a galactic astrologer. And I'm having her on today to really speak more about her understandings of galactic astrology. So, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, I have spoken a lot about how powerful astrology is and just that understanding of knowing thyself. And so we're going to take it one layer further into galactic astrology. So, Ulrika, welcome.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thank you. And I want to mention that she has written a book and that is on display. And I will be putting all of Ulrika's links below this video. So definitely check out everything there is to know. There's a lot. She has a beautiful website. So it's just fantastic. So Ulrika, I want to just dive right into astrology. When did you first develop an interest in astrology?
Mm, yeah, it was a number of years ago now. I actually, the interest was piqued by my younger sister, and because she had gone to some course and we talked about it, and I got more and more and more interested. So that's usually what happens. We get an activation through somebody else or come across something, which now for me was a number of years ago. And by myself, I kind of just was curious, and it just comes to you. That's the sign, basically, that there's something here that you may have done in a past life, or you've actually practiced astrology in the past. So pay attention to that, because that's what happened to me. I got activated and interested in it, and I just kind of dove into it all by myself and picked it up really, really quickly. So for me, yeah, this was a number of years ago now, and I have been using astrology mostly for myself until recently, when I actually became a practitioner and a certified galactic astrologer. But yeah, it's definitely that inner journey first in terms of applying it to myself and my own life. But then now, actually, helping others to know more about their soul self and their bigger self, as I say it.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. I love what you said about activation, because I believe right now on the planet, there are so many activations taking place that are piquing a return to some of these ancient sciences that will be returning on our planet. Because as you and I have spoken about, astrology is really giving you the opportunity to know yourself, know thyself. And when you begin that process, it just opens up so many opportunities for further expansion on your spiritual journey. So, getting into galactic astrology, so how would you explain the difference between sort of your standard Western astrology and, say, galactic astrology? How are they connected? How are they different?
So galactic astrology, the way I usually explains it, because some are familiar with the tradition, what I call traditional astrology, and the astrology I practice traditionally is the Western tropical zodiac wheel, as you may be familiar with. But when I explain galactic astrology, it's almost like the outer layer of that chart, the outer kind of cosmic layer of that chart that we usually traditionally look at, because it really is the outer perspective beyond our own solar system. And traditional astrology often takes into account our solar system and the rotating planets, so to say, in that environment. But galactic astrology is really including the stars as well, and more cosmic bodies. Yeah.
Right, beautiful. So I like, and again, going back to what you're saying, my understanding is sort of the astrology that we know on sort of the Western tropical type is more like this incarnation particular, to what's happening. Whereas what you're saying is this encompasses different incarnations that we've experienced throughout the cosmos. Is that a correct kind of understanding of or interpretation? Or
Well, I would say that I wouldn't say always that our traditional chart, so to say, is only this incarnation, because there are ways to actually look at past lives in a traditional chart as well. But it depends on what angle you're taking, because part of galactic astrology is also to combine it with intuitive downloads. So galactic astrology has a layer of the unseen in it as well, and tapping into the Akashic records. And there may be traditional, astrology astrologers that are using traditional astrology that way too, but I'm not familiar with anyone. So, it's not just to look at the chart and say, here's here's your galactic history. It's actually a lot more than that in terms of this tuning into this unseen, soul history of someone. But to go back to your question, I personally feel that our energetic imprint that is placed in our chart at birth, whether we use the lens of traditional astrology or Western traditional tropical astrology, or let's say Vedic astrology, which is another modality, or galactic astrology, it is really our unique soul essence that is in that chart. So I personally don't think it's just this incarnation, but it's free for interpretation.
no, that's beautiful. I mean, I just love learning, and thank you for explaining your perspective. I really appreciate that. So you've become a galactic astrologer. How do you feel galactic astrology is important right now at this time on our planet?
So why are we talking about this? Why is it important? I have a sense that humanity is ready to have a bigger perspective of who we truly are. And often we relate to ourselves like in this life, and I go to school, I go to work, I have this house, and the mundane. But this layer of information that we actually have access to all the time, it's just a matter of us opening up to that perspective, is now going to be more available, if you will, or more mainstream, if you will. And that's kind of and the reason for that is that we are ready to have a bigger perspective. That's my own opinion. As humanity, we're ready to have a bigger perspective of who we truly are, not just this person in a body on Earth, right? But what is and things that we experience, for example, in this life, may not be all about this life. And that's why we can then go back to past lives in the universe to say, because I think really what you're asking is, and my response is, we're ready to start relating to ourselves as energy. And with that statement comes, how do we relate to ourselves outside a physical body? And what can we learn about ourselves in that environment and from that perspective? So I think in simple terms, it's the more we relate to ourselves and our bigger selves, our higher selves, the more we need to ground ourselves too. So it's kind of this expansion of perspective. That's why I believe it's important.
Wonderful. No, I resonate with that absolutely. And I know I have so many friends that when I mentioned I was going to be interviewing a galactic astrologer, they're just on the edge of their seats to learn more about it. So thank you again. So going back to this whole idea of understanding ourselves and layers of ourselves throughout the universe and incarnations, there's so much conversation. And I know in several videos I've spoken about this idea of starseeds. So, would you speak a little bit about your understanding of starseeds and just share a little bit about what you've come to understand through galactic astrology?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, starseeds is a term that some of us are familiar with. And I think as humans, we want to put labels on people or like you're this and I'm that and so on. But I think it has been sometimes it's necessary to be able to kind of know what we're talking about. But it's a human way of wanting to label things. My own perspective on star seeds is yes, there are souls that have taken on missions that are of certain kind, if you will, to serve in a certain capacity. But there is no nothing that says that if somebody else that hasn't taken on a mission like that is any different. I think it's a useful term because star seeds has been talked about and written about, and there are books about star seeds. But I think that has served its purpose really well, and it's a terminology like as humans we like terminology, but at the energetic level, I don't see any difference between a soul and a soul in a way, right? It's more that energetic imprint that may be different for someone, and we prefer to label that a star seed, and another energetic imprint is something else. If you're, let's say, having a different mission of some sort that doesn't fall into that category. But so I personally don't really prefer the term starseed because I feel sometimes it may bring some judgment or polarization, even to divide people into certain categories. But that's just me.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I feel, yeah, like you were saying, we do want to label things in this reality. It's just that nature, and there is a lot of buzz about that concept. And also, the greater picture is that whether or not you are or are not a starseed, you are here incarnated on Earth for a purpose. We all come from that source frequency, which is pure unconditional love. And that's really all that matters, is that the love that we carry in our hearts and how we serve one another. So I really wanted to touch on that because I feel that it's important just to mention those words that are lingering around in our society. So curious about some of the readings that you have done. Well, obviously you've done your own chart. Would you be able to share a little bit about what you have discovered about yourself by going into your own galactic astrology?
I have actually done some reading on myself, and that's pretty interesting because but part of it I am actually leaving to others to read for me, because as I said earlier, galactic astrology is not just to pick up the paper and say, okay, you're this or you're that, right? It's a collaboration between our intuition and the Akashic records that actually the source is the source of this information, and our intuitive downloads in combination with the chart. That's how the themes are coming to life. But with regards to myself, I have a strong connection to Andromeda. And prior to Andromeda that's where the soul origin of all, as you mentioned, unconditional love. Each soul can be originated from different environments or dimensions, if you will. But when we start to talking about the reading and the galactic chart that we actually have access to, and that can get mapped in terms of those markings, that's when we start to talk about, an individual soul and their characteristics, if you will, or origin or ancient history. So yeah, personally, I have a strong connection to Andromeda, but I also want to clear a little bit of a myth around our souls and their heritage, because we often, again, wants to say, okay, you're an Andromedan starseed, or you're a Pleiadian starseed, or this or that. The truth is that our souls are so ancient that we have multiple connections out in the universe. So it's in my opinion not really correct to say that I'm only this, right? But we have, our souls have traveled and experienced so much. So let's say I have strong ancient history with Andromeda, but I also have history with, and many of us who are incarnated on Earth right now, we have history with Lyra constellation. We have history with Orion constellation. Many of us have experienced the polarity already in a previous environment in past galactic lives, that we may actually finish up some unfinished business, many of us, around that energy now, for example. So I don't know if that helps, but I would say that almost 100% of the individuals or the souls I've been reading for have multiple connections out in the universe. It's just a matter of if it's really in their ancient galactic soul history, or if it's more recent, let's say incarnations right before the first incarnation on Earth, for example. So yeah, it could be multiple connections, but it's all in the chart.
That's incredible. Wow. I mean, the information, and like you said, the intuitive aspect of reading a chart, it must be such an experience for you when you go into it and you really feel your way through, and the downloads that you receive from that. Going back to, I guess, the starseed or the markings that you have noticed in some of the readings that you've done in galactic astrology, what are you finding? I'm curious to know, and again, taking into account, we're so dynamic and multi-dimensional. What are some of, I guess, the more common that you might find? And then is there any particular planetary marking that you've seen that you found quite interesting, or that was new as far as like a soul's ancient history?
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of questions about like, oh, if I have this degree in my chart, am I this or am I that? So I'm going to just say a few that are very common, because we have, the human race have a certain history, galactic history, and in commonality, if you will. And many are connected to the Pleiades, for example, which is really in your chart connected to any points, I would say, late Taurus degrees and early Gemini. And I get a lot of questions about that, but some people just like, okay, great, now I know. But what really that is about is, what is your energetic balance or energetic experience from that star system, let's say. Because in the reading, I also am very, very intentional with the readings, that they are actually related to something that is going on in your life right now. So that's the connection that I wish people made. Not just say, okay, I'm a Pleiadian starseed, but actually, what was that all about? Because as a reader, I can uncover basically the energetic story about your connection with that star system. So, and how it affects you today.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
It is. It's really, really neat. And what I find so interesting is it really, and again, I feel these shifts taking place on the planet. We're knowing our ancient history, that galactically, we have existed on different planetary systems, that, our soul has likely gone through perhaps different galactic wars,
Mhm.
there's so many aspects of our soul's history that have been impacted by galactic events that will be coming to the surface more as we begin to understand ourselves on this planet in this galactic way.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting too, that many of us, have incarnated with karma from some of these previous incarnations, planetary incarnations, that we have chosen to resolve at present on this earth journey. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you explain sort of
Yes.
how, yeah.
I'm glad you asked that because, one perspective that is very important is the how we balance energy, which is how I explain karma. And each incarnation has to do with that karma balance, the energy balance that we decide to do. And yeah, so karma, the karma load of this incarnation, I definitely look at in a reading and can also tie back to your galactic soul history. And it's interesting to talk about karma in that sense, because yes, it can actually help people expand their own experience here on earth now. Because if you think about it, every incarnation that your soul has ever decided to be part of has led up to this life here right now on earth. So that's pretty mind-blowing, right? Everything that we've experienced as a soul, and here we are today, and that's kind of the last incarnation we're on right for now.
Right, that we know of.
But yeah, the insights that this type of information, the galactic information, can give you is understanding that it may not be in this life that what's causing your frustrations or anxiety or depression now. And that's mind-blowing to some people to say when I can track back to, okay, in this life, because it came up in this reading, which means that it's relevant to this life here, this dynamic took place. And just having that understanding of this dynamic at the energetic level can help resolve limitations that we experience in our own life now. And that's pretty powerful. And I mean, a lot of galactic astrology is also having its roots in past life regression, for example, and how we can tie back to past lives where people have been regressed back to, referring to galactic lives. And that's really how this came about, to be able to do it in a more structural way and link it to your astrology chart, which is just proven over and over again is a way to read that soul history.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I understand what you're saying 100%. And I know Julia, who developed this, has thousands of hours of the hypnosis, quantum hypnosis, where she has been able to develop this system of tracking galactic origins and ancient history and that sort of thing. So that's wonderful. And then I remember that I did send my birth details to you. And would you be able to share anything that, I understand your readings are quite extensive. And so I want to make sure everyone's aware that it's not like you just, set up an appointment. She's like, oh, well, this is your most, it's a very, dynamic experience and you receive a lot of downloads. But what information could you share?
Yeah.
I'd be fascinated to hear some of the discoveries.
I can give you a little glimpse of it. I have your chart in front of me here, and just to give a perspective, it takes me, I spend a number of days in someone's energy, so to say, working with the charts, working with the intuitive downloads, swifting out what's important in terms of what comes out in the chart versus the stories that come through. So it's definitely a very immersive environment for me for a couple of days before I deliver the reading to you. But so yes, it's not just to kind of print out
Right.
the chart and then kind of say this or that. But if I look at your chart, I can intuitively, already see that your chart, you have also, and this is what happens often, that a certain theme, certain energy souls comes to a certain reader, because it's the mirroring effect too, right? So it's like any coach, like I know already that anyone that comes to me has it's divinely timed, and it's an energy match, right? Similar with this. So yes, you do have strong Andromeda signature in your ancient soul history. I can definitely see that. You have connections to, let's see here, your ancient history is also part of interacting with the Centaurus constellation, if you will. Centaurus is closer to Earth, if you will, than Andromeda constellation. So that has likely been one of your incarnations, also in Beta Centauri Hadar. And you have also strong connections and energies coming in, supporting your destiny in this life, because the North Node, the South Node, I take a lot of energy from that, the karma that you're leaving behind versus the direction that you're going into, your South Node and North Node. And the alignments to that gives a direction for also your soul mission in this life. And you have very strong connections to Arcturus and the neighboring constellation Virgo, Spica as well. I definitely can see that you're carrying in this life some energies of that spiritual master, the teacher, to kind of, as part of your mission. Now, you also have a very strong angelic support. I can see that. I look at the royal stars, and we often have angelic, the angelic realm comes in as a connection to the royal stars, and very much so. So your most recent soul history is you have spent likely time in the angelic realm as a soul. And to tease out the story around that, like, what was your role? What was the archetypal energy that you were working with there in most recent incarnations before you came to Earth? That requires a little bit of intuitive session with that connection to tease out. But that's some of the definitely some of the connections that you have very clearly in your chart. Now, you also have strong connections, and with strong connections, I mean often when we have an alignment in our chart that's conjunct, like together, or opposite, means that you likely have had some sort of incarnation or a long-term visit to those constellations. And those that I mentioned for you, you likely have that type of connection to it. But also, advanced souls like yours coming to Earth also have access to, the black holes. There is the Great Attractor, for example. I'm tossing out some names here: the Shapley Attractor, the Galactic Center. I view them and as source of wisdom, basically. And some of us have more access to those black holes, universal wisdom, if you will, than others. And I can see those alignments in the chart as well, and tie them back to kind of what area of life that would be most utilized in your life now.
Ulrika, I just have to say that I sent Ulrika my information, but I did not receive any of this until now. And I'm just like, I've been receiving goosebumps just throughout this whole conversation. And just like, especially this information you're sharing with me. And I just feel like just so much humility and like gratitude. And I'm just feeling really overwhelmed. Because
Big hug.
thank you. I really I have no words, and it's still a lot of what you've said to me is not really fully gone in, and I understand your sessions are so much more than just this information, because you did touch on the royal stars and how they play a part. And I mean, I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but I really appreciate all of this wisdom that you're sharing.
Yeah, but this is exactly what happens. It's an activation. This information, I'm the conduit for it, but it's an activation of somebody's, like your soul already knows all of this information. It's just a matter of our mind wants to kind of make sense out of it, but your soul, your heart already knows all of this. So it's great that we could have a live validation, like your reaction
Yeah,
is that validation, your response to that information.
it's
And that's
so
exactly what happens in the readings. Like imagine an hour and a half of that. so it's
yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want just everyone to really go on this journey of knowing thyself, because really and truly, as Ulrika said, no matter where you have come from, you are such a powerful aspect of unconditional love, and you are here for this most amazing transition that's taking place right now on the planet. And so I just want to thank you so much, Ulrika. I know my
You're
time is
welcome.
running, and I would love to have you back if you would love to come back and share more about
Absolutely.
yourself. It's just been such an honor. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and definitely check out Ulrika's information below, and just have a blessed day. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.